Assalamu alaikum students. Now today we are going to start the next part of the chapter cells and tissues, chapter number 4 of biology. So that is about the passage of molecules into and out of the cell, that how molecules can move in and out of the cell, what are its passageways and what are the procedures through which it takes place. So you know that the cell, the membrane of the cell is called as the semi-permeable membrane because of the ability to pass some specific organisms, some specific molecules to pass through it. So cell membranes do it through the phenomena of diffusion, facilitated diffusion, osmosis, filtration, active transport, endocytosis and exocytosis. The first thing is about the diffusion. Diffusion is what? It is the movement of molecules from an area of higher concentration to the area of lower concentration. That is along concentration gradient. That means that everything can move from the higher concentration towards the lower concentration. That is why we say that it is along the concentration gradient. So most of the molecules move from higher concentration to the lower concentration, while there are some that move from low to high. So the overall movement is thus from high to low gradient. So eventually the molecules reach a state of equilibrium where they are distributed equally through the area. That means that some molecules move from higher concentration to the lower concentration, some move from lower to higher, and in this way they maintain the equilibrium state. So diffusion is one simple method of movement of substances within the cell as well as across cell membrane. Like carbon dioxide, oxygen, glucose, etc. can cross all cell membranes by the process of diffusion. Movement of glucose molecules is from small intestine, that is lumen, into the blood capillaries of villi is another example of the diffusion, because a cell does not expend energy when molecules diffuse across the membrane. So diffusion is type of the passive transport. The other thing is the facilitated diffusion. What is the facilitated diffusion? Its name is indicating that diffusion is taking place, that movement is taking place, but by the facilitation of something else. Like many molecules do not diffuse freely across cell membrane because of their size or charge. So such molecules are taken in or out of the cell through any transport proteins present in the cell membranes. When a transport protein moves a substance from higher to lower concentration, this process is called as the facilitated diffusion. The rate of facilitated diffusion is higher than simple diffusion. Facilitated diffusion is also a type of passive transport because there is no expenditure of energy in the process. This is showing that what is the passive transport? That type of transport in which there is no expenditure of energy. You can see in this figure that these are the transport proteins. This is a process of diffusion. Like easily the molecules are moving, passing through the membrane from higher concentration towards the lower concentration, but here the transport proteins are present. They are helping the molecules to move from higher concentration to the lower concentration. The next method of transport is the osmosis. Osmosis is movement of water across semi-permeable membrane. Means the membrane from which it takes place is the semi-permeable membrane, from a solution of lesser solute concentration to a solution of higher solute concentration. The rules of osmosis can be best understood through the concept of tonicity of the solution. Tonicity means that there is a relative concentration of solute in the solution being compared. The hypertonic solution, that is relatively more solute is present. Hypotonic solution has less solute, and isotonic solutions have equal concentration of solute. Water balance problems. Whenever an animal cell such as the red blood cell is placed in isotonic solution, the cell volume remains constant. Why is it so? Because the rate at which water is entering cell is equal to the rate at which it is moving out. So when a cell is placed in a hypotonic solution, like isotonic solution means it maintains the concentration. Hypotonic solution, the water enters and cells and may rupture like an overfilled balloon. Similarly, an animal cell, if it is placed in a hypertonic solution, will lose water and will shrink in size. So in hypotonic environment, for example the fresh water, animal cells must have ways to prevent excessive entry of water, and in hypertonic environment, for example the sea water, they must have ways to prevent excessive loss of water. So you can see this here in the figure that this is ruptured when placed in the hypertonic solution. Isotonic solution, there is no effect because the amount of water entering is equal to the amount of water moving out from the cell. And in case of the hypertonic solution, as it releases large amount of water, so what happened, it gets shrinked. So if the amount of water is increasing, it makes the turgidation, and the phenomena is called as the turgor or turgidity. So there is also one more thing, that there is the shrinking of the cytoplasm, and this shrinking of cytoplasm is called as the plasmolysis. Then osmosis in guard cell. What is the link of osmosis in guard cells? Stomata that is present on the leaves, epidermis of the leaves, and it is surrounded by the guard cells. So during daytime, these guard cells are making glucose, and so are hypertonic, means higher concentration of glucose is present. Then their nearby epidermis cells. Then water enters them from other cells and they swell up. In this form, what happened? They assume a rigid board shaped and pore is created between them. At that time, when there is a low solute concentration in guard cells, water leaves them and they become flaccid. In this form, both guard cells rest against one another and the opening is closed. In this way, the transpiration process is more in the daytime and less in the night time. But the application of knowledge about semi-permeable membrane. In this we can talk about the filtration. Filtration is what is the process where small molecules are forced to move across semi-permeable membranes with the aid of hydrostatic pressure or blood pressures. Mean through the water or through the blood, the molecules can move. Small molecules can cross the semi-permeable membrane. Then the next is transport, is the movement of molecules from an area of lower concentration to the area of higher concentration. That is opposite to the diffusion. So this movement against the concentration gradient requires the energy in the form of ATP. So in this process, the carrier proteins of cell membrane uses energy to move the molecule against the concentration gradient. For example, the membrane of nerve cells have carrier proteins in the form of sodium-potassium pump. So in a resting nerve cell, this pump spends energy to maintain their higher concentration of potassium and lower concentration of sodium inside the cell. For this purpose, the pump actively moves sodium to the outside of the cell where they are already in the higher concentration, and similarly this pump moves potassium from outside to inside of the cell. As you can see in this figure, that these sodium molecules are moving out of the cell while potassium is moving inside the cell. So these are the carrier proteins that are helping it, and while you can see that the concentration of sodium is less in the cell while it is more outside the cell, while the concentration of potassium is less outside the cell while more in the cell, but still it is moving from lower concentration to the higher concentration. For this, they require energy, which is in the form of ATP, and it is moving from lower to the higher concentration. Next thing is endocytosis. Endo means inside. So it is the process of cellular respiration of bulky material by the unfolding of cell membrane. The two forms of endocytosis are phagocytosis and pinocytosis. Phagocytosis means the cellular eating, and pinocytosis means cellular drinking. Cellular means that thus eating of cell and drinking of cell. In phagocytosis, cells takes place in solid material. It takes place while in the pinocytosis, cell takes in liquid in the form of droplets. Then the next one is exocytosis. Exo means to move out. It is a process through which bulky material is exported. This process adds new membrane which replaces the part of the cell membrane lost during the endocytosis. So you can see in this figure that here it is happening. This is the endocytosis. Bulky materials come inside. It contains the membrane, part of the membrane, and after that, when exocytosis occurs, these material can to be exported, and then it gives the membrane. The membrane is again added along with the cell. Now come towards the animal and plant tissues. There are different types of animal and plant tissues. Firstly, we talk about the animal tissues. Animal tissues are of four major categories: epithelial tissues, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and the nervous tissue. The first one is the epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue is further of 5 different types. on the basis of its shape as well as the number of the cell layers. Then the first one is the squamous epithelium. You can see in this figure, it consists of a single layer of flat cells. It is found in the lungs, heart and blood vessels, and it allows the movement of materials across it. Then the second one is cuboidal epithelium. It is a cube shape, that is why it is called as the cuboidal epithelium, and a single layer of cube-shaped cells. So it is found in the kidney tube, small glands, etc., where it makes different secretions. The next one is stratified squamous epithelium. It has many layers. You can see it in this figure. It has number of layers present in it, and it is the lining of esophagus and mouth, and so also over the skin. So it protects the inner parts. Columnar epithelial has a elongated cell. It is found in the alimentary canal, gallbladder, where it makes different secretions. Then ciliated epithelium. As you can see, it has a number of cilia present on it, so it is called as the ciliated epithelium. It is present in the trachea and bronchi and propels the mucus. Then the next is the connective tissue. How the connective tissue work? Connective tissue, it has the connecting function, as its name is indicating. So it supports and binds other tissues. Unlike epithelial tissues, connective tissues has cells scattered throughout an extracellular matrix. A common example of these tissues are cartilage, bone and blood. These are present in where? In the cartilage, bone and blood. So the adipose tissues, these are present in the kidneys, under the skin and abdomen, is also part of the connective tissue. It provides energy and support organs. The next one is muscle tissues, means in the human muscle these tissues are present. These consist of bundles of long cells called the muscle fibers. It is the most abundant tissue in an animal cell. Cells of this tissue have ability to contract. So these are of three different types. These are skeletal muscles, smooth muscles and the cardiac muscles. Cardiac muscle, the name is indicating, near to the cardia, heart. So it is present in the heart cells, in the hearts, and these cells are also striated, but there is a single nucleus in each cell. Then the skeletal muscles, you can see in the figure, these are actually the nucleus which are present in these muscles. So skeletal muscles or striated muscles are attached to the bones. Their cells are striated and contain many nuclei. They are responsible for movement of bones. Smooth muscles are found in the walls of alimentary canal, urinary bladder, blood vessels. So they contain smooth cells, each with a single nucleus. They are responsible for the movement of substances. The skeletal muscles are also the voluntary in action. That is, their contraction is under the control of our will. Like it is up to us that when we want to move our arms. So in this way, it is in the voluntary action, while smooth and cardiac muscles are involuntary action. As you know, we have no control in the beating of our heart. So in this way, it is involuntary in action. Next is the nervous tissue. We know that an animal cell survival depends on its ability to respond appropriately. So these nerve cells, these are the nerve cells, and it helps to pass the message from one part of the body to the other. So nervous tissue is found in the brain, spinal cord and nerves, and it performs the task. Its main task is to pass the message from one part of the body to the other. The other one is the brain, definitely. So from skin to the brain and then back to the part of the skin or any part of the body. For example, if we touch something and something hot, we move our hand back. That means that the message was passed from the skin to the brain and then back to the skin or hand, and that's why we pulled it back. So this is the main function of the nervous tissue. Then the next thing is about the plant tissues. How they work, what are its types. The first one is the simple tissues. Simple tissue is further divided into two types, meristematic tissue and permanent tissue. These tissues are composed of cells which have the ability to divide. These cells are thin-walled, have large nucleus and small or no vacuole. They do not have intercellular spaces among them. So it has also two types, the apical meristem and lateral meristem. Apical meristems are located at the apices of roots and shoot. When they divide, they cause increase in the length of plant. Such growth is called as primary growth. Then lateral meristems are located on the lateral side of the plant, that is the roots and shoots. By the lateral side of roots and shoots. So by dividing, they are responsible for increase the growth of plant parts. So this growth is called as the secondary growth. They are further of two types, vascular cambium and cork cambium. Then the permanent tissues. Permanent tissue is classified further into different types. The first one is the epidermal tissue. Epidermal tissues are single layered. They act as a barrier between the environment and internal plant tissues. So in roots, they are responsible for the absorption of water and minerals. On stem and leaves, they secrete the cutin, which prevents the evaporation. So epidermal tissues also have the specialized structure. They perform specific function. For example, root hairs and stomata. Then ground tissues. Ground tissues are simple tissues made up of the parenchyma cells. Parenchyma cells are the most abundant cells in the plant. Overall, they are spherical but flat at point of contact. They have thin primary cell walls and have large vacuoles for storage of food. So in leaves, they are called as the mesophyll and are the site of photosynthesis, while in other parts it plays the role in respiration and protein synthesis. The next is the support tissue. Support tissue is further of two types. This is the collenchyma tissues and the sclerenchyma tissues. Collenchyma tissues are found in the cortex, means the underside of the epidermis of young stems, and the midribs of the leaves and in the petals of flowers. They are made of elongated cells with the unevenly thickened primary cell walls. They are flexible and function to support the organs in which they are found. The second one is sclerenchyma tissues. They have rigid secondary cell walls. Their cell walls are hardened with lignin, which is the main chemical component of the wood. Means because of this lignin, the wood is so hard. So mature sclerenchyma cells cannot elongate, and most of them are dead. Then the compound tissues or complex tissues. It is of two types, the xylem and phloem. Xylem is responsible for the transport of water from roots to the aerial part of the plant. Due to the presence of lignin, the secondary walls of its cells are thick and rigid. So that is why xylem tissue also provides support to the plant body. Two types of cells are found in xylem tissue, basal elements and tracheids. Basal elements or cells have thick secondary walls. They lack end walls and join together in the form of long tubes. And tracheids are cylinder cells with overlapping ends. Like you can see, it has an overlapping end, while this is the basal elements. The other one is the phloem tissue. Phloem tissue is responsible for the passing of organic matter, that is food, that is the prepared food, from the part of the plant to all the parts of the plant. So phloem tissues contain sieve tube cells and companion cell. Sieve tube cells are actually present because these contain the small pores and it join to form the long sieve tubes. And companion cells make proteins for the tube cells. So this is all about the tissues, animals and plant tissues, and this is the end of our chapter number 4. Thank you.